Welcome everyone to our open house for Phase 1 engagement on the Windsor Street Exchange redevelopment project. If we can just go to the next slide, I'll share how to turn on the closed captioning for this event. At the bottom of your screen, there's a little closed caption button. If you turn that on, that will show the closed captions on your screen. And we'll go to the next slide. So again, welcome to our open house for the Windsor Street Exchange redevelopment project. My name is Megan Soroka, and I'm a program engineer with transportation planning. We appreciate you joining us tonight virtually, and we thank you for your patience with any technical challenges as we work through those. Next slide, please. Before we begin today's presentation, we would like to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. HRM acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. We would also like to affirm that we are in the decade for people of African descent. African Nova Scotians are a distinct founding people in our community who have been a key part of Nova Scotian culture and history. We acknowledge that African teachings, strength, and perseverance continue to challenge and inspire our community. Next slide, please. I'd like to introduce the project team that will be participating in today's open house. As I mentioned, I'm a program engineer and am leading the project for HRM. Tanya Davis is the program manager of transportation planning. Megan Backus is an active transportation planner and is leading the Africville Active Transportation Connections project. Dave Espeseth is a project planning coordinator with Halifax Transit. Deanna Wilmshurst is a client services coordinator and will be managing the webcast behind the scenes. HRM has awarded a contract for the functional plan preliminary design to WSP Canada. Jenny Lugar is a planner and will be leading the presentation today. Greg O'Brien is the WSP project manager. Dave McCusker is a senior transportation engineer on the project, and Andrea Hart is the project coordinator. I would also like to thank the area councillors for sharing details of our public engagement and joining us tonight to listen into the comments and questions that we are hearing through this process. Next slide, please. Before we get into the details of this evening's open house, I'd like to share an overview of the project. In partnership with the province of Nova Scotia and the Port of Halifax, HRM applied for funding to address a bottleneck, the Windsor Street Exchange, located near a major port, the Fairview Cove Container Terminal. The Windsor Street Exchange redevelopment was awarded funding through the National Trade Corridors Fund in June 2019. Earlier this year, a contract was awarded to WSP to complete the functional plan and preliminary design for the project. This design process includes this first phase of public engagement we are holding this spring, a second phase of public engagement this fall, and then the third phase of engagement on the preliminary design is expected in early 2022. The detailed design will be completed in 2023, and this involves the details of where infrastructure will be located and the development of construction drawings. Construction is expected to take 2 to 3 years and is currently scheduled to begin in 2025. Details on construction timelines and impacts will be shared after the design is completed. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to hand it over to Jenny Lugar to lead us through the rest of the presentation on this project. Thank you.
Hi there, everybody. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Jenny, and I'm going to be walking us through some slides this evening about the project. Quickly on this evening's format, I'm going to, as I said, be giving a brief presentation with information on project background and existing conditions to help lead the question and answer period. There are going to be slides during this presentation with questions for the audience that you can respond to. On the next slide, we'll tell you how to submit your answers to these questions. And then in the second half of the meeting, we'll be opening the floor to a Q&A period. It's important to note that during the Q&A, Tanya Davis from HRM will be moderating, and she'll be selecting questions for the project team to answer. Additionally, note that there will be a video recording of tonight's meeting available on the website, which also has an online survey that we encourage you to participate in, and we'll share those links with you at the end of the slide deck. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there will be slides asking you to comment throughout the presentation, as well as a Q&A session at the end. The method to submit your comments throughout or your questions afterwards is the same. Step 1 here on the slide here is at the top right hand or in the top information bar on your screen. You'll find a small speech bubble with a question mark in it. If you click on this button, it will open a sidebar which says live event Q&A. On this sidebar, you can toggle between the questions that you've asked and those which have been featured by the moderator. You can use this function to share your comments during the pause slides when we pause for comments, which ask participants a specific question. And then also note that during the Q&A period, questions selected by the moderator for answering during the Q&A period will appear in the featured questions, and you won't see them on your own questions page. A summary of all of these comments and questions will be available afterwards on the Shape Your City website. Next slide, please. So we're going to jump right into the project background and talk about the purpose of the project. The purpose of this project is to redesign the Windsor Street Exchange to provide connections between strategic corridors in the regional mobility network, to increase intersection capacity by improving road safety for all users, to accommodate active transportation connections through the Windsor Street Exchange, to accommodate transit priority measures, to improve the flow of vehicles and goods movement, and finally to align with the goals of Halifax by completing a GHG and climate change resilience assessment. Next slide, please. As Megan mentioned, this portion of the project is the functional plan and preliminary design portion of the project. So in terms of the scope of doing a functional plan and preliminary design, a functional plan is a visionary conceptual design of an intersection and adjacent road network that confirms that changes to an intersection can be constructed. Following that is the preliminary design, which considers the redesign of a street or an intersection in greater detail. As Megan mentioned, afterwards there'll be detailed design, which will lead into the construction stages. Next slide, please. So the Windsor Street Exchange was selected by HRM as an important project for a series of reasons. The first reason is that in 2019, funding was awarded from the National Trade Corridors Fund for the project, so it was the right time to do that. The second is that approximately 48,000 vehicles per day travel through this area. The third is that the Windsor Street Exchange is currently operating above its available capacity during peak travel periods. The fourth is that Windsor Street Exchange is considered a poor environment for the safety and comfort of people walking, rolling, and cycling. The fifth is that people need to accommodate, the Windsor Street Exchange will need to accommodate the Bus Rapid Transit Green Line and to integrate with the transit priority from the Bedford Highway. And finally, to address the long-standing bottleneck near the Fairview Cove Container Terminal, which will improve goods movement and which is associated with overseas trade. Next slide, please. There are three key considerations that the project team will be bearing in mind throughout the project. The first is the importance of the Windsor Street Exchange to the Fairview Cove Container Terminal, and by association, the movement of goods throughout Nova Scotia, Canada, and to overseas. The second is the competing demands on the Windsor Street Exchange due to being only one of 5 road entrances onto the peninsula, which is the primary economic center of the municipality. And the third is that there are more stakeholders in this process than in usual processes due to the many competing interests for this intersection and for the adjacent land. So those include adjacent landowners, the Bridge Commission, the Africville community, and of course the surrounding community and the public at large in HRM. And while these are the key considerations, there are certainly other considerations that the project team will bear in mind, including not disturbing the adjacent cemetery and working with abutting property owners to mitigate impacts throughout the project. Next slide, please. So we're going to have our first pause for comments here. The question that we're asking is, what do you feel is the biggest concern that should be considered in the redesign of the Windsor Street Exchange? So at this point, if you'd like to contribute an answer to that, you can follow the instructions by accessing the Q&A box, clicking on the speech bubbles in the top right-hand corner of your screen, and then typing into the live event Q&A question box. We'll pause for a few moments, and if there's any answers that come in, I'd be happy to read those out for folks. Everybody's shy tonight. Okay, well, we'll give people a little bit of time to think on that, and do feel free to put a comment in the Q&A live event Q&A box if something comes to you throughout the presentation, and I'll be happy to share that. Next slide, please. Next, we're going to talk about the study area for the project. So the study area, as shown here, is outlined in red. As you can see, it goes up the Bedford Highway towards the Fairview Overpass, but not quite to the Fairview Overpass. It covers Bain Street on the north end and goes down Windsor Street about 500 meters on the south end of the study area. It includes the Kempt Road intersection and then the Lady Hammond and McKinnon Street intersection as well. So it's the area outlined in red, as I said. Next slide, please. The scope of the preliminary design and functional planning portion of this project will have the project team looking at how to improve safety for all road users, how to improve the efficiency and functionality of this intersection for vehicle and goods movement, how to enhance user experience and safety for active transportation users, and finally, how to integrate with the BRT Green Line from Joseph Howe Drive and the transit priority options coming to the Bedford Highway. Next slide, please. Meanwhile, the project team will also be considering how to integrate with other ongoing projects in HRM, which are going to have a direct impact on the Windsor Street Exchange project. These include the Bedford Highway Functional Plan, which includes transit priority measures and other mobility changes to the Bedford Highway that was endorsed by Council in 2020. Next slide, please. The second project the team is considering for integration is Halifax Transit's bus rapid transit strategy. The Green Line and the BRT network, which will operate close to adjacent intersections at Joseph Howe Drive, Main Street, and Robie and Yonge, will be a key consideration for the project team as we move forward. Next slide, please. The next project for consideration by the project team is the Africville Active Transportation Connections Project. The objective of this project is to determine connections for walking and cycling between the Africville National Historic Site and the rest of the Halifax Peninsula. This project is identified that integration with transit was very important. More information and community engagement on potential routes is going to be brought forward as part of the phase 2 of the Windsor Street Exchange engagement, which we are anticipating for fall of this year. Next slide, please. And then finally, the Windsor Street Exchange Community Benefits Project. So HRM is currently working with the Africville community to explore opportunities for building community benefits into the redesign of the Windsor Street Exchange due to its proximity to the Africville National Historic Site. These benefits could include active transportation connections, infrastructure upgrades, social procurement, or other options as identified with the community. Next slide, please. So I am seeing some comments from our last pause for comments here. So we do have a second question on the board, but I'm going to start out by reading some of the questions to answers to the last question, which was, what do you think should be the key considerations for the project team as we move forward in this project? So I'm seeing things such as accessibility for vulnerable road users, and that the sidewalks are currently not hospitable to people walking or wheeling. That the current hostile environment for anyone not inside a vehicle is challenging. That pedestrian and cyclist safety and movement on and off the peninsula is an important consideration. That better transit connections are needed. Feelings that ease for transit and cyclists should be prioritized. And there is a question here, but we're going to save questions. We're going to save questions until the end of this, so we'll be able to get to that during our question and answer period. The second question that we're hoping you might be able to provide us comment on is, how do you think the Windsor Street Exchange should best integrate with other projects and neighborhoods in the area? So as we discussed before, you can access the Q&A box by clicking the speech bubbles on the top right-hand corner and then typing into the live event Q&A box. I'll wait for some of those to roll in. So I'm seeing that safety for walkers, bikers, and folks in wheelchairs is a priority for project integration. Seeing that noise for the surrounding area, for neighborhoods in the surrounding area, should be a consideration. Okay, that's great. And if anybody else has anything to add to that one, you can certainly leave that in the comment box, and we will get to it at our next pause there. Now we're going to move on to the existing conditions of the Windsor Street Exchange. Next slide, please. So many participants tonight are probably pretty familiar with the existing conditions of the Windsor Street Exchange, so I'm going to move through these slides fairly quickly, but we wanted to highlight the current state for those who may need a reminder or may be less familiar with the area. So this slide shows the Windsor Street approach northbound, traveling towards the McKay Bridge, the Bedford Highway, or Kempt Road. As you can see, there are 4 to 5 vehicle lanes and sidewalks on either side of Windsor Street. Next slide, please. This slide shows the Lady Hammond Road approach to the Windsor Street Exchange, traveling either onto Windsor Street or onto the Bedford Highway. As you can see, there are 4 to 5 vehicle lanes and a sidewalk on the south side of the street, which continues up Lady Hammond Road. Next slide, please. This slide shows the Kempt Road intersection from the perspective of approaching Lady Hammond Road in the left picture and then traveling onto Kempt Road from Lady Hammond Road in the right picture. This intersection contains right turning slip lanes from both directions and has a crosswalk connecting the sidewalk along the south side of Lady Hammond Road. Next slide, please. This slide shows the Windsor Street Extension approach to the Windsor Street Exchange, which has only vehicular access as it accommodates vehicles coming from the McKay Bridge. This intersection allows vehicles to continue onto Windsor Street, to turn left onto Lady Hammond Road, veer right towards the Bedford Highway, or turn right onto Bain Street to access Africville Road and the Fairview Cove Container Terminal. Next slide, please. Lastly, this slide shows the Bedford Highway approach to the Windsor Street Exchange, which allows traffic to travel towards the McKay Bridge and onto Lady Hammond Road, or turn right into a slip lane to Windsor Street. The eastbound side of the intersection has 4 vehicle lanes and a sidewalk, while the westbound side has 2 vehicle lanes and no pedestrian access. Next slide, please. So we're going to pause for comment again here and open the floor. The third question is, what do you feel is most in need of improvement in the study area? There may be some similar answers to this one as before. I know that we've already covered the pedestrian environment needing improvement, the transit needing better prioritization. I'll wait for things to roll in here. Okay, so I'm seeing that access to Africville Park would be valuable. Prioritizing how the Windsor Street Exchange can help to connect pedestrians and cyclists to surrounding neighborhoods. Seeing some comments about hours of construction, noise, that sort of thing, which will be a consideration later on in the project. And then considerations to adjacent properties, which are accessed off the Bedford Highway. And then perhaps improved or at least not detrimental access to the St. John's Cemetery that's difficult to access as it is now. Give another few moments in case anybody wants to add anything else to what's in need of most improvement. Yes, general safety for walkers and bikers, and also for cars, so less surprise merges. That's what this comment says. Improved timing of traffic lights to prevent the lineups that occur right now. So just general better traffic flow, that's certainly in the scope of this portion of the project. Okay, I'm not seeing anything else rolling in as of right now, so we'll move on here. We're going to continue exploring some more existing conditions. Next slide, please. So the slide shows a detailed aerial view, which doesn't contain the extent of the study area, but shows the existing active transportation facilities immediately at the intersection. As you can see, there's a sidewalk and crosswalk system for people walking or rolling, stemming from the Fairview overpass onto the Bedford Highway and continuing both on Lady Hammond Road and on Windsor Street. There's a crosswalk in front of the northbound vehicles from Windsor Street to provide access to Lady Hammond Road and the sidewalk that runs along the south side of Lady Hammond Road. The sidewalk is integrated with the location, the sidewalk network that exists here is integrated with the location of bus stops, which are shown on the next slide. Next slide, please. This is a wider out aerial that shows the entire study area, showing locations of bus stops that service the Windsor Street Exchange area. As you can see, these are located for travel in all directions through the Windsor Street Exchange and have access from existing sidewalk infrastructure, as was shown on the last slide. Next slide, please. Finally, in taking a look at nearby origins and destinations, there are several which have been identified as important by our project team. These include those shown on the screen, which are the neighborhoods off of the Bedford Highway, the Fairview neighborhood, the Halifax Shopping Centre, West End neighborhoods down off of Windsor Street and Connaught Avenue, the Kempt Road and Lady Hammond Road commercial area, the North End neighborhoods off of Lady Hammond Road, the McKay Bridge and access to Dartmouth from the peninsula, the Africville National Historic Site and Park, as was already mentioned by a participant here, and finally the Fairview Cove Container Terminal. Next slide, please. So we're going to have one final question period before we move on to our Q&A session here. The question we're asking now is, what origins and destinations do you feel are most important close to the Windsor Street Exchange? Okay, so I'm seeing a couple questions that came in, or a couple answers that came in from the last question. Looks like it's similar, so priority for transit, cyclists and walkers, ease of movement to the McKay Bridge, pedestrian crossings, cycling connections, speed of approaching vehicles, more clarity for people driving, which lane is designated for them moving in a direction. Improved sightlines for vehicles and access points for businesses off of Lady Hammond Road. There's sometimes some poor visibility off of Lady Hammond Road. So we'll move on to this question now. If anybody has any origins or destinations that they feel they would like to highlight. Africville Museum, yes, certainly. So that's in the National Historic Site, or it's part of the National Historic Site. West End neighborhoods, the bridge, certainly the McKay Bridge is a key consideration here. Mount St. Vincent University, so there's a comment here that students and staff often have a hard time getting there on time. Neighborhoods near the Bedford Highway, certainly. Any and all destinations are important, yes. Comment here about acting as a terminus for the Chain of Lakes Trail, so access to the trails that that begin just off the peninsula. Comment here about living in the North End and would like to be able to cycle along the Bedford Highway and then beyond to Africville National Historic Site, so crossing through the Windsor Street Exchange safely on a bike. Destination as the Bedford Basin as a destination, and presumably all the businesses that are along the Bedford Basin, Bedford Highway along the basin. North End Halifax as an important destination. There's a comment here that Mount St. Vincent University is within cycling distance for many, but that people will choose to drive instead because of safety concerns at the Windsor Street Exchange. Again, similar comment here that walking and biking access to the Mount St. Vincent University would be an important consideration, important destination. Okay, so that kind of covers a lot of the origins and destinations that we had identified, and thank you all very much for contributing those. We'll go to the next slide, please. So to get in a little bit to next steps and engagement opportunities throughout this project, the process for this project has been divided into 3 phases. So we're currently in our data collection and community input phase, though all 3 phases have a chance for community input. But during this phase, we are gathering all the background information that we can, both from the public and from an on-the-ground kind of engineering standpoint. The next phase will be the concept option development, and the third will be the preliminary design. During phase 2 and 3, we will have design options to present to the public, and there will be many opportunities to participate similarly to this round, including surveys, public open house meetings, and other opportunities. Next slide, please. As for this round right now, and actually throughout the life of the project is going to live online at the Shape Your City website using these links here. This is also highly Googleable. If you Google Shape Your City Halifax and type in Windsor Street Exchange project, this link will come up. So there are still opportunities to engage, certainly during this phase beyond this evening. If you have any questions about the presentation that we don't get to during the Q&A session momentarily, you can post your questions on the Q&A form on the project website, where members of our team are going to be providing answers regularly. And additionally, of course, there's a survey available on the project website and an opportunity to provide feedback using a map where you can pinpoint areas or feedback for further review. Next slide, please. So this is back to our instructions on how to submit comments in case anybody missed it the first go around. We're now going to move into the Q&A period of our meeting. So again, here are the instructions for participating. We're going to do our best to get to all the questions that come in, and we will also be posting a lot of the frequently asked questions on the website with answers to those. So I'm going to go over quickly again how to access the Q&A, the live session Q&A. So in the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll find a small speech bubble with a question mark in it. Click on this button. And then the second step is the button should open a sidebar which says Live Event Q&A. On this sidebar, you can toggle between the questions you've asked and those which have been featured by the moderator. You can use this function to now ask questions, and we're going to be moving into a question period during which Tanya Davis will be moderating, and various different members of the project team will be selected to answer questions depending on expertise. So thank you very much for listening to the presentation thus far, and we hope that you have some questions to ask, and we'd love to answer them for you.
Thanks, Jenny. Really appreciate that, and I appreciate all the comments that have come in so far. So one of the questions I had already published, so we're going to go back to that to begin with, and that question I think is for Greg O'Brien. Is the area being considered to be changed include the on-ramp approaching the Windsor Street Exchange from Joe Howe Drive? The person who posted this says it's a real bottleneck that affects the congestion at the Windsor Street Exchange.
Hi, I think Jenny had showed in this slide presentation that the project boundary blends in, I guess, just east of the existing Fairview overpass interchange area. There's another project HRM is working on through that area. So the current project we're looking at this evening, I guess it does not go as far as the Fairview interchange, but we have been looking at the volumes, the traffic volumes, and how they interact with the ramps to Joe Howe and out to the Bedford Highway.
Excellent, thanks, Greg. So the next question I think is from Megan, Megan Soroka, and I'll publish it now. And the question is, how does this project connect to the integrated mobility plan?
That's a great question. So this project is taking a complete streets approach to the design process, considering all road users and their needs as we look at the design options for the street. The project is also going to further some of the IMP's goals, including reducing port-related truck traffic and traffic-related noise, improving safety, improving transit service, improving active transportation connectivity, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So we are considering the IMP through every stage of the design process.
Thanks, Megan. Next question up, I think, is also for Greg. So the question is, what is the plan for port truck traffic? You're muted, Greg.
Thank you, Tanya.
You're welcome.
And I already said that I see that happen every day, so I apologize for that. For the port traffic, we're in the early stage of the project, so we're really gathering information. We're gathering, I guess, the important origins, destinations through the project area, and I guess the port is one of the stakeholders on the project. So learning, I guess, how some of the port activity may be changing into the future as well. So access to the port is an important consideration for the project, and I guess right now we don't know how it will be connected, and I guess stay tuned for the fall when we come back with, I guess, the options that are considered.
Excellent. I'll keep you on the hook there. So why doesn't the study area extend further down to the Joe Howe and Main Street interchanges? The green bus rapid transit line, as part of our rapid transit strategy, needs to get up to Lacewood, maybe via Main. The container terminal needs better access to the 102.
Those are the project limits that were defined for this project by HRM and the port. So possibly Megan might be able to answer a little bit better case the boundaries for this. I guess a project does have to be cut off somewhere, and as I mentioned, there are, I guess, another project that HRM is undertaking along the Bedford Highway that would cover, I guess, a portion of that area.
Yes, that's correct. So this project is the extent of this project and design is focused, but we are integrating with other projects, as Greg mentioned, the Bedford Highway Functional Plan, other projects that are going on that may not be as further as long, that will consider that, as well as the rapid transit strategy is sort of a larger planning document that we're keeping in mind as we look at other transportation planning objectives.
Excellent, Megan. And Megan, this question is in line with that. How is this integrating with the plan changes to the Bedford Highway? And I assume this is meaning the Bedford Highway functional study.
Yes, so the functional study, the functional study that was done on the Bedford Highway was adopted by council last year, and they're moving forward on their next phase, which is preliminary design, up to Kearney Lake Road, I believe. I'm working closely, as well as the WSP team, with the Bedford Highway project manager who's leading that project for HRM. And it's a little loose. We don't have an exact line, but we want to blend both designs together just east of the Fairview overpass to make sure that the active transportation connections, the transit priority measures, and of course the traffic movement all align through that section. We're not sure exactly how the construction will align, but that will be part of our planning and design process.
Fantastic. I think this question is also for you, Megan. News story said road container traffic will follow the railway cut from Halterm. Is that still true?
So the port has submitted a complementary project to the National Trade Corridors Fund. Their project is looking at a rail corridor as a part of that project between the Fairview Cove Container Terminal and the South End Container Terminal, and the purpose of that rail corridor project will get port-related truck traffic off of downtown streets Part of that is alleviating the bottleneck through the Windsor Street Exchange to improve access to Fairview Cove, which is the part of the project we're taking on. So that project is still going forward. The Port of Halifax is leading that project, and HRM is a stakeholder on that project, as the port is a stakeholder on our project.
Excellent. Maybe this question for Dave McCusker. Do we think that congestion pricing or tolls for private vehicles will be part of some of the design solutions for this project?
That's an interesting question. I think there's quite a bit of value to things like that. The issue with that is it's really a system-wide issue. It's something that would be applied region-wide to the system as a whole, and not specifically to one portion of the roadway network. So for that reason, it's not specifically a part of this study.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. Maybe back to Megan Soroka. This is again around the Bedford Highway redesign. The question is this project intended to work with the Bedford Highway redesign? And I think we answered that yes, it was in fact. But do you know the timelines on each of the projects?
So as I mentioned on at the first part of this presentation, the Windsor Street Exchange project, we're expecting to have the detailed design completed in 2023, and construction is scheduled to begin in 2025. We expect that to take 2 to 3 years. The Bedford Highway project is focused on the section between, the next phase of the Bedford Highway project is focused on preliminary design between the Windsor Street Exchange and Kearney Lake Road. That project is just, the preliminary part of that project is just beginning, and we'll be coordinating closely with them. The construction for the Bedford Highway is scheduled to begin after the Windsor Street Exchange construction is completed, but we'll be looking through the design process if there are any opportunities for integration on construction. And of course, as I mentioned, we'll be integrating very closely on the design. So we'll have more details on construction timing on both projects as we work through the design process.
Excellent. Thank you, Megan. So this question I think is for Greg. How will the design prioritize safety and movement of children walking and biking in the area?
Hi, I guess one of the objectives of the project is to improve, I guess, the safety and accessibility through the area for all modes. I guess pedestrians, cyclists are certainly included in that. And one of the ways of, I guess, measuring the comparison between kind of the existing and the future state would be, I guess, a multimodal level of performance. So it's not just looking at motor vehicles, but looking at, I guess, all the modes in the area and comparing how they are operating now and into the future. I guess one of the advantages of having something that's so difficult for pedestrians as now is I think we're going to be able to come up with some options that will make it a lot better. And then I guess another objective is to, I guess, look at options to connect active transportation, I guess, to the north. Like right now, there's no sidewalk, no crosswalk to, I guess, get over to the Africville Road and the Africville Park and Community Center.
Excellent, thanks. So you answered the next question that somebody had, which was around whether the functional plan will include a multimodal level of service analysis, which Greg just indicated that it would.
Certainly.
Excellent. Megan Soroka, I think either you or Megan Backhouse, can you tell us a bit about how the Africville community has been involved so far in the plans and development?
One of the things we're doing on the Windsor Street Exchange project is we're looking into options for including community benefits as part of the project. So community benefits are just a way to improve the social impact of a project. In this case, we're looking at options for infrastructure benefits that may benefit the Africville community just due to the proximity. We're also looking at consulting with the Mi'kmaq and urban indigenous community as part of identifying community benefits. We don't know what those look like yet because we want to hear from the community on what that looks like. We did consult with the Africville community last fall And what we heard from the community in that consultation is that they do want to be involved in the discussion, and we want to have them involved in the discussion. So we'll continue those conversations to identify exactly what those community benefits will look like and how they would be incorporated into our final design and our construction.
Excellent. Thank you, Megan. So I think for Greg, will the updated design avoid right lane yields? These are extremely dangerous for pedestrians as drivers prioritize movement at these types of intersections.
I guess I wouldn't say that the design will necessarily avoid them. I guess all modes are a consideration. In certain circumstances, right turn channels are quite beneficial and can improve safety for pedestrians as well when you have very high volumes of right turning traffic, because then pedestrians could cross at a right angle without crossing, and I guess having right turning traffic approaching from over their shoulder. So it's looking at all options, so don't know if it's necessarily going to, I guess, avoid them. It doesn't mean that we put in right turn channels everywhere, because it prioritizes movement. So we're looking for a balanced design. For example, I guess a roundabout, right turn channel can operate similar to a roundabout, getting the crosswalk back from the yield point so that approaching drivers can focus on the crosswalk first, and then the I guess traffic at the yield point. So some of the newer designs for right turn channels can be quite beneficial, rather than, I guess, encouraging just high speed movement, but more smooth flow.
Excellent. So maybe for Dave McCusker, the next question is there a consideration being given to grade separated intersection at this location? Likely not the most desirable solution, is what this person indicates.
Not desirable from a number of perspectives, and cost being not the least of those, but the answer is yes, we will consider using grade separations to handle at least a portion of the interchange traffic. It's possible that there won't be any, but that will certainly be explored in the study.
Thank you, Dave. This is for Megan Soroka. What is the purpose of excavation earth moving work ongoing west of McIntosh Street? Will this have an impact on the study area or the Windsor Street Exchange planning?
So the work that's going on off of McIntosh Street is the construction of the new McIntosh Depot, part of our road operations and construction group. Currently, the McIntosh Depot is located off of McIntosh Street. It houses our snow clearing operations, our roadwork operations, our forestry group. There's a number of people working down there. I apologize if I missed any of you. So the construction on the new McIntosh Depot will be taking place until likely the building will be completed next year. And we are obviously working closely with that team, as well as it's an HRM-led project. So we'll be considering any activity. We don't expect it to increase, but there will be a number of offices that are moving to that building. So we're taking into account the effect that will have on traffic flows in the area.
Thank you, Megan. And maybe this is a question also for you, because it deals with construction, and we're not quite there yet. The question is there any information on the number of hours of construction per day, the time of those hours, for example, evening and overnight work, and the days of the week or weekend this will occur? There are several neighborhoods that live close to the exchange that will be impacted by this construction noise. Yes,
and I know that's one of the public's major concerns with this, is what the construction impacts will be. Unfortunately, we don't have answers on that, but what I can share is through the design process, we are doing constructability reviews. So for the design concepts that WSP is working on, we'll also be looking at how that would be constructed and what impacts that would have. So we can consider that as part of our decision-making process as we choose our final design option. So it is something we're thinking about from the very beginning, but unfortunately we won't have answers to share until the design is done.
Excellent, thank you, Megan. Dave McCusker, sorry. As this is an important through area, should it be approached as a complete street? Wouldn't it also be an option to look at separation in this area. For example, separate through and truck traffic, including container terminal traffic, bus traffic, and local foot and cycle traffic.
I'm not sure I'm getting all of that, but it certainly is a through area, and the ability to separate certain flows and types of traffic will definitely be a consideration. It should be approached as a complete street, although a complete street does mean that there's some accommodation of all needs, but some priorities for ones that are more appropriate for that area. So it does, I think, require the complete streets approach, but there are a number of good suggestions in there regarding handling different types of traffic, and that will be part of the concepts that we'll be looking at. Thanks,
Dave. Maybe just stay on the line there. Might you consider an AT ramp over the rail tracks at the northern prolongation of McIntosh Street to make an AT connection to Africville Road from the intersection of Lady Hammond and McIntosh? Yes, that's a good suggestion, and that's something we'll certainly consider. Thank you. Question, and maybe for Megan, will the integration of the two plans, I assume they mean the Bedford Highway Functional Plan and the Windsor Street Exchange, be available for viewing at the same time so that we can see how the designs impact on each other?
That's a difficult question, and I'll have to confirm with the Bedford Highway team what their timelines are for preliminary design. It's something we can look at integrating with their functional plan that is already completed. We are integrating with the active transportation connection to Africville project that's ongoing. Megan Backus is on the line as well. That project is sort of in a similar phase of the Windsor Street Exchange project, and they'll be coming back with functional plan and design concepts in the fall as well at the same time as us. So we'll be able to look at those together.
Thank you. Maybe for either Greg or Dave, maybe Dave, is there potential to, as part of this project, plan improvements to the rail path along Massachusetts Avenue, potentially with a connection over Highway 111 to Africville? The study will certainly look at our ability to move active transportation connections through the area, and that's certainly one possibility. The whole issue of connecting to Africville is an important part of the study. There are different ways to do that, and this could certainly be one consideration. Thank you, Dave. I guess maybe Dave again. Have you thought of how the construction noise will be mitigated for nearby houses? For example, there are rows of townhouses overlooking the port and on-ramp of the McKay Bridge. Are sound walls being potentially considered? Not as part of this study. It's certainly an important aspect, but that's typically dealt with when the construction plans and phasing is being done up. There are ways of mitigating the noise impact other than sound walls, and that will be part of the construction plan, but not part of this study. Excellent. Dave, you're up again. From a complete streets and IMP lens, this appears to be a link versus a place. How do you consider the priority of people walking and cycling in the link context? How do we consider it? It's certainly a consideration in the study. It is a linkage. It is making important connections within the regional network. Specifically, how we do that is part of what the study will determine, but it is certainly a priority that will be looked at. Not sure I'm answering the question, but. Thanks. And if that wasn't answered, you can always put in another question. We can come back to that. Next question up. I feel bad, Dave. I keep going back to you, but you're live right now, so I think that's Greg okay. Wants this one. Are you considering a 2-level project a rotary. So I assume that means grade separation or a rotary or roundabout.
Hi, Tanya. I can answer that. It's Greg here.
Okay, thanks, Greg.
I guess two level. There's certainly a couple of very high volume movements that I guess our initial look is they would benefit with some two levels, some grade separation to, I guess, separate the movements. That would possibly free up some volume through the intersection that a roundabout may be possible as well. So certainly a roundabout, grade separation are some of the options that we're looking into.
Thanks, Greg. I'll keep you on for this next question. In your prioritization of walking and cycling through the Windsor Street Exchange, we'll be starting with the position that sidewalks and protected cycle lanes will be separated and not combined into multi-use pathways.
I wouldn't say that is a starting point. I guess we're looking at, I guess, options for making connections. Sometimes, I guess we do have a lot of constraints in the area. We have the cemetery on one side and a lot of port and retaining wall on the other. So sometimes due to with certain volumes of pedestrians and cyclists, a multi-use trail is certainly a good option to, I guess, accommodate the various modes while, I guess, within the available constraints. I guess a good sample of that is the Chain of Lake Trail is it's a multi-use trail. I don't think we would want to say that people can't walk on that or people can't bike on that anymore. I think it's a very important link and connection in our AT network, and it functions as a multi-use trail.
Thanks, Greg. Next question for you as well. How is greenery and landscaping going to be used? This can help cut down on noise and make it more appealing to walkers and bikers as well as drivers and tourists.
I guess right now we're doing the functional plan and functional design. From that, we will be able to identify where there are areas for landscaping, greenery. Again, there's certain, I guess, constraints on the available land. It looks like a big area, but it's not as big as you hope it is when you try and fit everything in. We're trying to fit in. So I guess as it moves beyond this stage, landscaping will be, I guess, included in the more, I guess, later stages for detailed design.
Excellent. You're up again. Will the cycling additions as part of this project be all ages and abilities, and can you define that?
I guess we were just talking about cycling facilities that could be bike lanes, could be multi-use trail. I guess with the volumes and the mix of trucks we have, we're not expecting to see shared bike lanes. That's kind of how you have to try and get through the area now. Sorry, I just lost half the question. Define all, I guess. Can you define the all ages and abilities? I guess earlier there was a question I'd seen about how do children, etc., and wheelchairs possibly get through the intersection. And I guess the all ages and ability, would you really be comfortable, I guess, biking through the area with a small child with you? And that is one of the considerations for the area. Right now, I guess, as mentioned, the Chain of Lake Trails ends, and this area is really a gap in the network. You can't get over to Africville, and it's, I guess, on a, I guess, any good way. And then the cycling, it's really a barrier to get through the area.
Thank you, Greg. You can answer this one as well. May you consider recommending in the functional plan and carrying on the preliminary plan that all crosswalk markings on pavement be thermoplastic?
I guess if we're getting right down to the pavement markings, and we're doing good. That's right to the detail. But I believe a lot of the markings that are going in for crosswalk features are more the permanent type of markings.
Excellent, thank you. So for Megan S., will Halterm containers be transferred to trucks at Fairview?
So the port, as I mentioned, they're doing their own complementary project that's managing truck and container flow through Fairview Cove Container Terminal and, of course, the South End Container Terminal. The exact details of that project, I don't believe they have that nailed down and haven't shared that yet. But I will share, I'll just share this in the chat. There's a link to the port's ongoing projects, and they will share updates there on that project and looking for feedback when that comes up. So I'll share that in the chat if you're interested in the port project.
Thank you. We've been asked for the contact person for the Port Authority. I don't think that that's something we should share publicly. So if there is some questions around that, certainly, you know, that's not something we should probably share at this particular point in time.
There is contact information on the port website, so
okay, perfect.
You can reach out through that channel. Excellent.
Thank you, Megan. I am getting a comment here that the sound is not working. I'm just wondering if that's a fact for anybody else. I know questions are coming in, so maybe it's just this one individual. I'm not sure how to remedy that for you. So this says a continuation to the question from a complete streets and IMP lens. This appears to be a link versus place. How do you consider the priority of people walking and cycling in the link context? The question was mostly interested in the priority bit. Greg, can you answer that, or maybe Dave?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it again. I would certainly agree that it is a link and not a place, and that we're looking at that in that context. Active transportation is certainly an important priority. How that gets delivered in this particular project is something yet to be seen, but we've certainly established that it is a priority to be able to get people through the area via active transportation in all of the connection directions.
Thanks, Dave. I guess back to you, Greg. The question is, would you say that if a MUP was proposed, would it have the same width as the chain of lake trails, or if not, how would you determine the proposed width of the MUP?
I guess part of it is what constraints do we have, what space is available, and that will help determine, I guess, one of the aspects that determines what we can do. Believe the Chain of Lakes Trail, maybe 4 meters. A lot of the trails that are going in are in the 2.5, 3 meter range. So I guess looking at projected volumes of pedestrian cyclists, I guess I was out on the Chain of Lake Trails on the weekend. It was quite busy. I was on a bicycle, and yeah, you had to slow down lots and get around people. And I guess with the volume of pedestrian and bikes we're seeing on Chain of Lake Trail right now, it's good to have the width there. So I guess a little early to tell exactly what we're going to have for width if that was one of the options considered, but I guess looking at the kind of volume of pedestrians and bikes, it might be mixing.
And I think to add to that, I think it's still early on in the process. We're going to be coming back with conceptual plans for comment and that type of thing once we get the survey data and the designs start to work out. So next question from Megan S. How much is this redevelopment going to cost? Is there federal money, provincial money, and or municipal money funding? And what might be the burden on the HRM taxpayer dollar-wise?
That's a great question, and this project is a result of multiple levels of government collaborating on funding. So the National Trade Corridors Fund, as I mentioned, is contributing $23.5 million to this project. The remaining project costs will be contributed by the province of Nova Scotia, Halifax Regional Municipality, and the Port of Halifax. And this project, the portion that is being funded by HRM is part of the capital project budget. So this is just part of HRM's capital budgets that money is decided to be assigned to certain projects throughout the capital planning process.
Thanks, Megan. Next question for you as well. Is there consideration of discussions with adjacent properties to how they may be helpful to adding to solutions?
Absolutely. We had a meeting with the area property owners and businesses just yesterday. So we're starting those conversations early, even before we have design concepts, because we want to get an idea. Again, as we're doing with the public tonight, we want to get an idea of how people are using the area, what future plans they have within the area, and what kind of improvements they would like us to consider as we're looking at design concepts. So yes, they're part of the conversation.
Excellent. And maybe another question for you, is land acquisition expropriation anticipated for this project? Or maybe that's for Dave or Greg. I guess they're the designers.
I think at this point of the project, we're looking to work within the existing road right of way, but we don't know for sure until we get through the design concepts and look at all of the different options, what the exact extent of the design may be. So we'll have more information and we'll reach out. Dave may have something to add to that.
Yeah, I guess I would just comment, it's like the overpasses and grade separations. It's something we're going to try to avoid, but there are, a lot of demands that we need to try to accommodate with what we do in this area, and it may be something that we may have to look at, but it is something we're going to try our best to avoid.
Excellent. Thanks, Megan and Dave. Next question, maybe for Dave, since you're live right now. Is active transportation safety and movement of the flow of traffic the priority? It isn't clear from the responses.
Well, it definitely is a priority. If the question is it the priority? I'm not sure it's a one thing or another. There are a number of things where we're trying to accommodate the movement of truck traffic, the movement of buses, the high number of vehicle traffic, and the need to accommodate pedestrians and bicycles through the area. So they're all things that are being looked at. If we're the intention is to pick one of those as the priority, that's probably not going to happen.
Thanks, Dave. This is an interesting question, and I'm not sure, I don't have the answer. I don't think I was around long enough, but can you share any history about why the Windsor Street Exchange was designed the way it is? How old is the basic layout? And then the question is, do engineers like history? Dave, you've probably been around HRM the longest. Do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I got all the gray hair, so I guess I'm the one to answer that question. I've seen pictures of this area before there were any overpasses or anything. I think it was just an at-grade crossing of the rail track with a T intersection. So quite a bit has changed in the past. There have been a number of iterations to this. I was just writing one of the background reports this afternoon and kind of listing out all of the increments that have been done to it over the past 20 years or so, and there have been a number of them. So it's evolved over time. We're considering this as probably the first major significant improvement that's been made since it was created in the first place, and I couldn't even tell you when that was. It's before my time as an engineer in Halifax.
Thanks, Dave. So we continue to kind of get pushed on, the trail width and complete streets, and I think those are important questions. And again, I want to say that we are still early in the process, so we will see more as it comes out to figure out what all the constraints are for all the different users. What is the estimated start date for construction? Maybe Megan Soroka, you can answer that.
Yes, absolutely. So we're expecting construction will take 2 to 3 years, and right now it's scheduled to begin in 2025. As I mentioned before, it's really hard to define what the construction will look like until we've completed the design phase. So that may change, but we do plan to share more details on construction, potential impacts, and duration, and what exactly that will look like as we work through the design and have those details to share.
Excellent, thank you, Megan. Maybe for Megan again, is there a plan to do a specific consultation with youth about the design?
We don't have anything specific planned, but we certainly encourage everyone who uses the area to get involved. I do know, I was looking at some of the stats of folks who have answered our online survey, and there were a number of people who indicated they were under 18. And we love to hear from those people. We love to hear from everyone who's moving through the area or would like to move through the area. So definitely encourage any youth who are interested in the project to get involved in the engagement process. And that's through Shape Your City, halifax.ca.
Excellent, thank you, Megan. Next question for you again, Megan. Can you share some examples of how Halifax will influence the project?
So we mentioned that we're going to do a greenhouse gas mitigation assessment and climate change resilience assessment as part of the project. Those will just tell us how we can incorporate considerations for climate change and mitigating greenhouse gas emissions in our design. So part of that is, moving people through, lowering idling, that type of thing. We're also looking at, Greg mentioned, we'll be looking at options for landscaping and green infrastructure in the area as well. And as well, important consideration is as one of the key access points to the peninsula. It's also a key part of our evacuation route that we need to consider in case of emergency. So it's really important for us to make sure that this intersection is resilient to any climate change impacts that's part of the goals of Halifax as well.
Thank you, Megan. This question, I'm not sure who has the answer to it, but was the Windsor Street Exchange built to allow access to the McKay Bridge?
I don't know. Dave, do you have history on that? I believe, I will say, what the last question on history asked if engineers like history, and I do. So I did pull the history of Windsor Street and the Lady Hammond Road as one of the original roads out of Halifax to Windsor, which is interesting. So I believe the area, the road through the area predates the McKay Bridge by a number of years as one of the original roads out of Halifax. So it wasn't built to allow access to the McKay Bridge, but that's certainly another key access point. And as the Bridge Commission is looking at options for the McKay Bridge redesign, we are working closely with them on our planning process and on their planning process so that our designs are aligned as well.
Thank you, Megan. Another question for you. Are HRM and the port collaborating on this?
Yes, we are. So as I mentioned, the port is a funding partner on the project, and part of the purpose of the project is to improve goods movement to and from the port. It is one of the goals of the National Trade Corridors Fund.
Excellent. And another question for yourself. Can you remind us what the next opportunity will be to learn about how the design is coming together?
Yes, in the fall, we expect in the fall, but we'll update on Shape Your City, on the Shape Your City Halifax.ca website. So we expect in the fall to be able to come back with some of the design options that we're looking at and get feedback on those. And we look forward to people joining us again in the fall.
Thank you. And another one for you, governance. Aside from the sharing of funding, will the decision-making on the functional and preliminary designs be subject to provincial and federal approvals?
So this project is led by Halifax Regional Municipality. So decision-making is within the municipality's area. The province and the federal government have contributed funding, but they aren't part of the decision-making process. So that does rest with the municipality.
Excellent. Maybe for Greg, Nova Scotia's new accessibility disability legislation will impact every sector. What features, besides obvious things like crosswalks or chirping crosswalks and curb cuts, will you need to include in order to make the area compliant?
I guess the sidewalks and the crosswalks are certainly major parts of that, and sure we've seen a lot of the tactile features at the crosswalks as well, so that to show when a pedestrian's stepping from, I guess, the safety of the pedestrian area to a conflict area. So those are some of the features. Again, this is functional design, so we're setting it up that I guess further features could be considered during detailed design.
Thanks, Greg.
But really the crosswalks and I guess location of the crosswalks, et cetera, are certainly important features that we can tackle now at the functional stage.
Excellent. Is consideration being given to the visual appeal of the project in its role as a gateway to Halifax? Would you like to answer that one as well?
Sure, it's certainly a gateway to the peninsula, as was mentioned earlier. One of 5 ways to access the peninsula of Halifax. So sometimes people, the first time into Halifax, that's the way they go through, and other people in their daily commute. So the visual appeal of it is a consideration. We might not have a lot of details, I guess, at the functional stage, but it will, I guess, set us up to know what other features could be added during the detailed design stage.
Thank you. And what I have in front of me is our last question. So if there is more questions, we still do have some time. So feel free to put some more questions in the chat. But what I have right now is our last question. And maybe Greg, you're showing live, so maybe it's you. Might overhead walkways, pedways be used to move people over the traffic in some parts of the Windsor Street Exchange?
It's certainly a consideration. That's why it's good to have these discussions early on and kind of see what the possibilities are. Earlier, there's a question on, I guess, getting grade separation for pedestrians to get across the rail corridor, I guess, just to the north of the project area. So there's certain areas of the project where the grades certainly help, that an overpass could help. There's other areas, I guess, to ramp up to get a headway across might not be achievable.
Thanks, Greg. I'm not seeing any more questions. Maybe I'll turn it back over to Jenny to continue with the conversation.
Hello again, everyone. So I'm just gonna put out one more call for questions in case anything comes in, and I think I can take over if needed here. One that just came in does seem like a duplicate here. So just one last call for questions in case anybody has anything left to ask. As I mentioned earlier, there will be forms on the website. We can toggle back up to what that website is if you'd like to take a look at or write down the URL there. There will be forms where you can continue to ask other questions. Oh, there the website is on the final slide here. And please do participate in the online survey and share that with as many people as you can. And there's also a mapping exercise, as I said, on that a website that allows you to kind of drop a pin and talk about a specific area, specific crossing, specific driving lane, that sort of thing. There are a couple more questions that I'm seeing rolling in here. Oh, one's just a thank you. Okay, there are 3 more questions. Since we have some time left, we'll make an attempt to get to these. So are there opportunities within the project area to reserve land for the provision of affordable housing? I think that this is probably a Megan Soroka question.
So as part of the project, we're not anticipating creating new land for development. So I know this question came up because that's something that the Cogswell project, which is another major project we're looking on, is very a big part of that project is creating new land for development. In this area, we don't expect to have that same result, so that won't be something that we're looking at.
Okay, thank you, Megan. The next is what kind of development is foreseen in the area around the Windsor Street Exchange? There's a lot of empty land or underutilized land. This is actually a question I can answer. So we will be looking at that as part of the project. We're looking at the existing land uses and the planned land uses for upcoming in the center plan, and then in the original Halifax, well, Peninsula and mainland bylaw, which both apply in this area. Those will be considerations, but development and influence on land development isn't a part of this project in the sense that it won't be informing what land use is recommended. It will merely be looking at what has been recommended by the plans that are in place right now. Okay, another question that came in here. The Bridge Commission, HRM, and the Port are all involved in Windsor Street Exchange. Will there be a single voice for all three at some point? Megan, I'll flip that to you.
Yes, so as I mentioned, while all those, the Bridge Commission is a stakeholder in the project, the Port is a funding partner and as well as a stakeholder. But the project is ultimately being led by HRM, so HRM will be leading the conversation and be responsible for the design with input from those parties that are stakeholders, including all of our stakeholders. As Jenny mentioned at the beginning, there are, you know, this is one of those projects that there are a vast number of stakeholders, and we are trying to hear from all of them.
Thanks, Megan. I don't see any other questions coming in. There's one comment from, I know we've had some good history talks tonight. So someone has said, an aside for the history buffs, the original road to Windsor passed through the St. John's Parish grounds, which is now St. John's Cemetery. That's very interesting. Thank you for that contribution. We always like to learn about our city. So I don't see any others coming in. As I was saying before, there are many opportunities to continue asking questions and engaging on the website here that's at the bottom of your screen. Thank you all very much for attending tonight. We really appreciate all the thoughtful questions and all of the energy put into the comments and feedback. And we certainly will be taking all of this into consideration and, you know, using a lot of the feedback that we've collected and the information that we've learned from this event and from the online survey to inform the next stage, which will be the conceptual design options. As I said earlier, we'll be planning to come back to the public. We're aiming for the fall of 2021, but you can keep an eye on the project website, and that'll keep dates up to date for upcoming stages. So again, thank you all very much. I'll hand it back to Megan in case you'd like to do a send-off message.
I would just like to echo Jenny's thanks for everyone who's participated so far. We appreciate all of your responses to our online survey and your participation in our open house tonight. It sounds like people are excited to learn more about this project, and we're excited to hear about it. So thanks again for your feedback, and we look forward to talking to you more in the fall. Thanks again. Stay safe.